past hour, we learned that Maxime Bernier will be allowed to participate in 2 upcoming English and French debates. The leader of the People's Party of Canada was not included among the initial invitees, but the Independent Debate Commission had a change of heart. Vashi Capellos, host of CBC's Power and Politics, joins us live in Ottawa with more on this development. So, Vashi, what's the reasoning for including Maxime Bernier, and how might it change things?
Yeah, some really interesting reasoning. The commissioner of the debate commissioner, David Johnston, former Governor General, was tasked with looking into this one set of criteria, because there's a number of things that automatically got you into this debate, but there was one thing that he and the commission had a bit of a sort of discrepancy over, and that is whether or not you had a reasonable prospect of winning. And Maxime Bernier was asked to submit 5 ridings, and they essentially did. They looked at polls. They looked at their presence on media, that kind of thing, but they also did their own polling. And what they noticed in many of those ridings that were submitted is that at least a quarter, in most cases, of people either thought maybe they could, or didn't say no for sure, or likely were going to vote for a People's Party of Canada choice, which is fascinating considering what we've seen from most general polling, which is that, and that is nationwide, of course, that the party's around 1 to maximum 3% in some small instances. So basically what they're saying is he does have a reasonable shot, the party does have a reasonable shot in at least a few of these ridings, and that's enough for us. He should be in the debate. Really interesting decision that definitely changes the dynamic of this debate going forward.
It sure does. I just want, since you mentioned, let's talk, I'm just going to mention the ridings, because why not?
Sure.
La Beauce, which is, of course, Maxime Bernier's riding in Quebec.
That's his own riding, yes.
Etobicoke North, this is kind of, known as sort of Ford country, right? So this is in the Greater Toronto area. Nipissing Temiskaming, which is in central northern Ontario. Have I got that right?
Yeah.
Charleswood, St. James, Assiniboia, Headingley, that's the Greater Winnipeg area. And Pickering, Uxbridge, which is in the East Greater Toronto area. So there you go. So that means, Vashi, that if I've got it right, is that 6 leaders that are going to be in this French and English language debate? I think I've got that right.
That
because
sounds
if we have Yves François Blanchet de Bloc Québécois, plus the 4 main national federal leaders, and then throw in Maxime Bernier. Wow, 6 leaders in a debate. We've seen the Americans with their Democratic
yeah, that's what it evokes right
debates,
away, right?
It's like you see 10 of them at a time on a stage. So I guess it can be done, but interesting to see the reasoning behind the former Governor General David Johnston.
Yeah, very much so. The reasoning, and then you start looking forward to that debate. And besides sort of the way it might all play out, which will be super interesting to watch, it's the potential consequence of Mr. Bernier having that elevated platform, right? As I mentioned, the national poll numbers are very low for that party. Will this alter that at all? Will it expose him and his ideas to a whole new audience? Many of us see him on Twitter, see some of the sort of outrageous things that are said on Twitter by him and his party's account, and view him through that lens. He, and I think you and I have discussed this, is very different in person. In fact, he speaks differently. He communicates in a different way. Will that resonate with people? Will it not? I don't know. It's sort of a game changer for him and his party.
And let me just ask you about that, because, Vashi, it is interesting, don't you think, to see some of the debates that are happening. I imagine that Maxime Bernier will go after Andrew Scheer in certain ways. We're seeing this fighting between the Green Party and Elizabeth May. We're seeing all of these interesting dynamics kind of play out, right, in this election campaign generally, and then to have them all on the stage together. I think that'll be fascinating, though. How do you think that all of that will sort of play out?
I have no idea. Your guess is as good as mine. On the case of Maxime Bernier and the Conservative leader, though, when you think about it, he is specifically, remember that he got 49% of the Conservative leadership vote. He was neck and neck with Mr. Scheer. He is very much trying to peel back much of the Conservative support. He has not yet been successful in doing that. Obviously, the election will be the ultimate test of that. With this amplified platform, you have to wonder how hard he's going to go after Mr. Scheer in this debate, and how much harder that makes it for the Conservative leader, who will also have to fend off, likely, Justin Trudeau.
And finally, I wanted to mention that, what was it? I think Maxime Bernier put out a video on Twitter very recently thanking the debate commissioner for all of this. Vashi, do you think, was this a surprise that Maxime Bernier would be included or not? Or were you kind of really waiting to see whether or not David Johnston would say, okay, you're allowed in?
Yeah, I think it's, you could qualify it as a bit of a surprise. I'm not sure that, given their initial decision, and they seemed to defend it at first, that didn't seem like they would necessarily be persuaded otherwise, especially given, as I said, those low polling numbers. It was hard to see, I guess, now that they've done their own polling and saw something different. So I see their reasoning, and we'll have someone from the commission on the show tonight to ask him a little bit more about that reasoning. But I think it definitely has come as a bit of a surprise. And like I said, it changes the dynamic going forward. And you got to think it changes the strategy for a number of those leaders as well.
And it could, elevate Maxime Bernier. Frankly, I mean, this is like all of a sudden you're thrown onto this big stage. Like, it has that potential, right?
Yeah, it's the biggest platform he'll have this entire campaign.
All right, Vashi, thank you. That is
Thanks,
Power in
Andrew.
Politics. Vashi Kapelos in Ottawa.